If I could record this. So for splatter paint, use a toothbrush because the bristles are super stiff. I also painted a background color that is now dry. All my colors that I've already painted on here are dry. Watercolor bleeds. So you need to let different colors dry. So loaded my brush. Can you see that? Not very well. Let's get a little bit darker here. Somebody give me some paper towel. I think oh, never mind. I'm prepared. There. See that now? Good. So there's splatter paint. So think about how you might incorporate that into this project. And then metallic, I just want you to use the metallic set of watercolors, which are these. And you're just going to try to paint flat, even color. So pick a direction and go with it. So I'm going to go left to right. And it's shimmery, so it might be nice for sky or water, anything that would have a glare or shine coming off of it. So you probably can't see the shine from that, but you can at your desk. Sandpaper. So on an already dried surface, you're going to take some sandpaper and rough it up. What do you think that would be a good texture for? Bark? I don't know, that comes to mind. A graded wash. So starting out with pure color. And then diluting it with water so it gets lighter. So I want this to be just a little bit darker here. And then I don't need any more pigment. Now I'm just going to try to pull this, and it should end up getting lighter. Go back to the water dish. There's some funny glare. I'm going to absorb just a little bit in the middle here and then smooth it out again. Does that look darker to lighter to you guys? Oh, the resolution isn't the best. Now it probably does, right? You see it now? Good. All right, so moving on to color overlap. So layering different watercolors, be sure to let each layer dry or it's going to look horrible. So I did 2 colors already. They are dry. So I'm going to do 2 more on top. So let's try red or red-orange. And where they overlap, there is sometimes color change. You can see it. Sometimes there isn't. And it depends on the colors you're working with. So you can see it's darker in some of those areas. Wet on wet. So you're first going to wet the paper. Wet brush applied to wet paper. So then you're going to drop color in. It looks a lot like tie-dye. I'm going to do a little metallic. And then maybe this purple. See how it kind of swirls together? So it's also contained to where I wet the paper. So it's one way you can control watercolor. And the salt technique. So start with a wet on wet. So just wet this rectangle here. And then I would drop in more than one color. And then you just sprinkle salt on top. and the salt will absorb some of the water. And then once the salt is dry, so pretty much like the next class period, you can either scrape it off with a razor or you can leave it. It's really a design choice. This is a harder one, the gauze technique, but if you can pull it off, it looks really cool for like mountains. So just take some cheesecloth or gauze, lay it onto a lighter, already dried color, and then you're going to try to stamp some color on top. I'm going to try brown again. And where it touches the gauze, you should get some of that gauze texture. And then it's sort of like stamping with it. Let's move on to the next sheet. All right, so using a sponge or even paper towel to do a lift, so you could use that for highlights. And then you can absorb some of that and create texture. If you can't see that as well, you probably can with paper towel. So it absorbs some of the paint, gives you more of a highlight. Plastic wrap, start off with a wet on wet, just like the salt technique. Plastic wrap is good for a lot of different textures, like water, depending on your color choice. It could even be bark, mountains. Do more than one color because you can see it better. Some purple again. And then you take plastic wrap, and you only need a small piece, and you can either stretch it to create more line, or you can crumple it to get more like crazy or different looking organic shapes, I like to call them. And then once that's dry, so next class period, you peel off the plastic wrap. And you'll get something that looks more like that. So that texture, it'll look a lot like the way it does now, only dry. And cotton swabs. So using Q-tips and layering dots. And I think this looks really good for like foliage and stuff. I'm going to reuse these because I'm going to do the exact same colors. So I did a light blue because I think typically what you see through foliage is a lot of times sky. Sometimes you'll just see more green or mountains, it kind of depends on what's in the background. But you are going to stamp with a Q-tip. And then you end up filling these all in with different shades that make sense for what you're trying to do. So if I'm thinking foliage during the summer, this one's getting a little bit hard. I'm thinking different shades of green, maybe even some yellow green or yellow. I need new Q-tips. These things are so hard. I have to reuse. Big into reduce, reuse, recycle, but some things have their limitations. All right. Here we are. That's a nice round stamp. And if you were layering this onto like a wax resist with tree bark or something that definitely signals to the viewer, oh, those are trees. It's going to look like a clustering of leaves. Let's do this color again. I could really use some darker colors in here, but you get the idea. The point is to fill it in so it's not polka dots. And then using a wax resist, so maybe thinking tree bark, So using the crayon, pressing down hard, that wax of the crayon, creating a barrier, giving some nice texture again. I'm going to paint some of this right over, and you can see how the waxy crayon repels. Did you see that on the video too? Could you see that? Awesome. I could. I wasn't sure how clear it was. All right, so 2 more. Bruising with a toothpick. Texture line. Let's do some brown. This is another good one. I think of tree bark or even animal fur. I'm going to dry that just a little bit. And then flatten it out. And then you can take and make marks with a toothpick, which is probably hard to see with a resolution on here. But it does work. Stippling using a brush, so similar to the Q-tips, only you're going to use a round brush. So this is round, flat. Series of small dots of paint to build up values, visual texture. So it would give more of a variety from just the roundness of the Q-tip. If you wanted to put these in a different part, if you had a really wooded area or bushes or something. And then you just build this up.